They once roared with pride. Now they're fading from memory and resale listings. This is the countdown of motorcycles that used to matter and why they don't anymore. Watch to the end to avoid making the costliest mistake in your garage. Number 20. Honda Shadow Phantom. There was a time when the Shadow Phantom stood tall among budget cruisers, praised for its low-slung stance and classic blacked-out styling. It gave newer riders a dependable way to enter the cruiser world without breaking the bank. Today it feels like a time capsule from a riding era that is long past. The engine delivers 44 horsepower and 48 pound-feet of torque from a 745 cubic centimeter V-twin. This machine was built for smooth boulevard cruises, but in 2025, its outdated 5-speed transmission and lack of modern features leave it stranded in the past. Riders looking for performance or comfort now find the Shadow Phantom lacking. The suspension is stiff over bumps, the ergonomics punish riders on long hauls, and the analog instrumentation reminds you this bike has seen very few updates since 2010. Even die-hard brand loyalists have started favoring newer entries in the segment that offer lighter weight, better fuel efficiency, and upgraded rider aids. With used listings piling up and resale values slipping, the once reliable Phantom is now outclassed in nearly every category. It's no longer the cruiser you grow into, it's the one you leave behind. Up next is a heavyweight cruiser that promised performance but delivered fatigue instead. Number 19. Suzuki M109R Boulevard. Once hailed as a muscle cruiser with real street presence, the M109R was built to turn heads and shake pavement. But over time, that raw aggression became more of a burden than a benefit. The engine delivers 128 horsepower and 118 pound-feet of torque from a 1,783 cubic centimeter V-twin. On paper, it sounds like a dream, but in real-world riding, its sheer size and brute force make it a handful for most riders. The bike's heavy front end, stiff suspension, and awkward handling leave many questioning its long-term comfort and practicality. Power delivery is strong, but without rider aids or modern chassis improvements, it feels more like a straight-line drag tool than a true cruiser. Over long distances, fatigue sets in quickly, and the lack of refinement becomes impossible to ignore. Fuel stops feel more frequent than expected, and maneuvering at low speeds becomes a daily challenge. While the design once commanded respect, the dated ergonomics and raw manners have pushed it out of favor with today's riders. What was once seen as bold is now seen as outdated, and it shows every time it rolls up to a more modern alternative. If any of these bikes bring back memories or regrets, hit the like button and drop a comment below. We want to know which one burned you the most. Number 18. Victory Vegas. 8-ball. Great looks don't always save a bike from a silent exit, and the Vegas 8-ball proves that all too well. It delivered 74 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque from a 1,734 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin. Built by Victory Motorcycles, this machine had attitude, a long wheelbase, and blacked-out appeal, but it also came from a brand that no longer exists. While the ride was smooth and the styling earned attention, the lack of factory support since Polaris shut down Victory in 2017 makes ownership a gamble. Parts are harder to find, service is specialized, and resale value has steadily declined. What once looked like a bold American cruiser now sits in used listings collecting digital dust. Even die-hard Victory fans are jumping ship to more reliable and supported machines. Its silhouette still turns heads, but the reality of keeping one roadworthy keeps wallets closed. Coming up next is a rare sport bike that delivered power in spades, but left owners stranded when it mattered most. If you're tired of overhyped junk and want gear that actually lasts, we've linked our trusted riding gear in the description. Stuff that works, nothing that wastes your money. Number 17. MV Agusta Turismo Veloce. Luxury styling might catch eyes, but it cannot cover up ownership headaches. The Turismo Veloce delivers 110 horsepower and 61 pound-feet of torque from an 800 liquid-cooled cubic centimeter inline-3 engine. Designed for sport touring, it promised sharp handling and Italian flair, but what riders got was an overcomplicated machine with a thin support network and reliability questions. From confusing menu systems to twitchy throttle response, this bike often left riders frustrated rather than fulfilled. It lacked the long-distance comfort expected of a touring bike, and while performance was strong, reliability proved inconsistent. Add in the fact that parts availability is limited and service requires specialized technicians, and the ownership experience starts to feel more like a burden than a joy. Even simple repairs can lead to weeks of waiting and wallet pain, especially in regions without dedicated dealer support. Riders wanted a long-haul performer but instead got a short-tempered diva with expensive tastes. For a motorcycle aimed at long-haul enjoyment, the Turismo Veloce ended up feeling more like a showroom sculpture. Next is an American-made machine that roared back with power, but forgot to bring support for the ride when riders needed it most. Number 16. Harley-Davidson Street 500. Not every attempt to welcome new riders hits the mark, and the Street 500 is proof of that. The engine produces 40 horsepower and 29.5 pound-feet of torque from a liquid-cooled 500 cubic centimeter V-twin. While that might sound acceptable for a beginner in practice, it failed to deliver the riding experience many expected from a machine wearing the bar and shield. From the start, riders complained about build quality. Loose controls, rattling plastics, and muted exhaust notes made the Street 500 feel more like a budget import than an American cruiser. The handling was sluggish and the braking lacked confidence, especially for those just learning to ride. Even in city settings where it should have excelled, the bike felt unrefined and underpowered. Worst of all, it didn't have the sound, stance, or soul that longtime riders associate with the name. It was supposed to be an entry point to the Harley-Davidson lifestyle, but instead it often became a rider's last stop before trading up or quitting altogether. Even loyal riders quietly admit this one missed the mark. The next bike tried to bring sport touring and modern style together, but ended up frustrating those who bought in early and stayed too long. Number 15. Harley-Davidson Sportster S. Reinvention is risky, and the Sportster S is a reminder that bold change does not always lead to rider satisfaction. The engine produces 121 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque from a 1,252 cubic centimeter Revolution Max Vive twin. It arrives loaded with modern technology and muscle, but in a package that left traditionalists and newcomers equally unsure of its real purpose. With a high-mounted exhaust, minimal wind protection, and an aggressive riding position, the bike looks mean but feels compromised. Comfort suffers on longer rides, and many find the posture awkward for city use. It tries to appeal to younger riders with its digital display and selectable ride modes, yet the experience does not match the classic expectations of a cruiser. For its price, riders expect refinement, but what they get is a mix of potential and uncertainty. Even the performance, though impressive on paper, doesn't fully translate into a rewarding everyday ride. What was meant to be a revolution now sits in a gray area, lacking clear purpose or loyalty. Coming up next is a stripped-down cruiser that stayed simple for too long and now struggles to stay relevant in today's faster-moving market. Number 14. Yamaha Bolt R-Spec. Simplicity has its charm, but it also has its limits. The Bolt R-Spec offers 51 horsepower and 58 pound-feet of torque from a 942 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin. It's a bare-bones bobber-style machine designed for urban cruising, but it never evolved beyond its original release, and that lack of progress is impossible to ignore today. From its single front disc brake to outdated suspension and analog instruments, everything about the Bolt feels stuck in an earlier decade. While it was once a strong entry-level option, modern riders expect more than just a classic silhouette with minimal features. With no rider aids, no anti-lock braking system on early models, and basic rear shocks that bottom out under pressure, it lacks the refinement needed for today's demands. Even smaller touches, like lighting and controls, feel dated compared to other bikes in the same class. For a platform with so much potential, Yamaha simply stopped pushing it forward. Even fans of minimalist bikes are looking elsewhere, opting for machines that offer a better balance of tech, comfort, and character. Next up is a beginner-friendly cruiser that promised versatility but lost its identity by refusing to move with the times. Number 13. Kawasaki Vulcan S. Comfort and versatility were the Vulcan S's original selling points, but years of standing still have finally caught up with it. The engine produces 61 horsepower and 46 pound-feet of torque from a 649 cubic centimeter parallel twin. It came with adjustable ergonomics and an approachable stance, but never received the updates it needed to stay competitive in a fast-changing cruiser market. The ride remains smooth and the power delivery is predictable, but the styling feels dated and uninspired. With an analog gauge cluster, basic suspension, and no rider aids or traction control, it struggles to compete with even entry-level cruisers in today's market. Riders appreciate the low seat height and ease of use at first, but most outgrow the experience quickly. Add in the generic exhaust tone and lackluster road presence, and the Vulcan S begins to feel more like an appliance than a motorcycle with soul or heritage. The used market is flooded with low-mileage examples that fail to attract attention or retain value. Following close behind is a performance machine that looked unstoppable on paper, until real-world ownership revealed its true frustrations. Number 12. KTM 1290 Super Duke GT. Power alone does not make a bike successful. The Super Duke GT unleashes 175 horsepower and 103 pound-feet of torque from a 1301 cubic centimeter V-twin. It is packed with top-shelf components and electronics aimed at the sport touring segment, but it comes with a reputation for headaches that is hard to ignore. Riders report a range of reliability issues, everything from electrical faults to sensor failures, and those problems tend to appear early in ownership. The ride is sharp and aggressive, but the throttle can be twitchy, and the tech suite often feels more complicated than refined or intuitive. When things go wrong, the cost of repairs and lack of readily available parts turn a bad day into a long one at the dealership. Long-distance riders expect confidence, but this bike trades that for complexity. Comfort suffers too, with a seat that's too firm and vibration that wears you down over time. For a touring bike, trust and durability matter just as much as performance. In that regard, the Super Duke GT comes up short. Coming up next is a lightweight sport bike that looked fast standing still, but forgot how to make riders smile on the road. Number 11. Suzuki GSX 250R. Looking fast and being fast are two very different things, and the GSX 250R is a prime example of that disconnect. The engine delivers 24 horsepower and 17 pound-feet of torque from a 248 cubic centimeter parallel twin. Built as a lightweight sport bike, it falls short in nearly every performance category, especially when compared to rivals in its class, both new and old. Weighing more than many bikes with double the displacement, the GSX 250R feels sluggish off the line and struggles to maintain highway speeds without strain. Its soft suspension and underwhelming power band limit any real excitement even for new riders. With basic brakes, minimal electronics, and uninspiring styling, it offers very little to justify its place in today's crowded entry-level market. Fuel economy is decent, but that is one of the few highlights on a bike that otherwise leaves little impression. Riders quickly outgrow it, and the used market is flooded with low-mileage units priced to move. It may wear a recognizable badge, but the riding experience tells a different story. The next motorcycle tried to rewrite the rules of design, only to leave both traditional and modern riders scratching their heads. Number 10. Honda NM4 Voltus. Few motorcycles have divided opinions like the NM4 Voltus, a futuristic experiment that failed to resonate with traditional or modern riders. The engine puts out 54 horsepower and 50 pound-feet of torque from a 754 cubic centimeter parallel twin. With a fully automatic transmission and ultra-low stance, it looked like a concept bike that somehow made it to production with very few changes to make it practical. Marketed as a cruiser for the next generation, the Voltus confused more than it inspired. Riders found the long wheelbase awkward, the seating uncomfortable for longer rides, and the storage minimal to the point of being useless. Its performance never matched its aggressive looks, and the riding experience lacked both thrill and practicality. Despite having some modern features, it was too bulky for city use, too soft for open roads, and too weird for almost anyone. Even the instrument cluster, meant to look futuristic, ended up feeling distracting and cluttered. Instead of creating a new category, it carved out a dead end. Up next is an American-built machine that roared with big numbers, but fell silent when riders needed real-world reliability. Number 9. Buell 1190 RX. A powerful machine with a proud name, the 1190 RX was built for riders who wanted American muscle on a superbike frame. The engine produces 185 horsepower and 102 pound-feet of torque from 1,190 cubic centimeters. It offered true performance, but came with a set of problems no amount of power could fix, especially when the brand couldn't support its own comeback. The downfall came from the brand itself. After a short-lived resurrection, support vanished, leaving owners stranded without parts, software updates, or reliable service options. The ride was intense, tall, twitchy, and aggressive, which made it unforgiving for anyone not on a track. Combined with divisive styling, excessive vibration, and limited dealer access, it became a rare machine that most riders could not trust for long-term ownership. Even die-hard fans of American engineering had to admit that practicality lost to passion in this case. Even enthusiasts who admired its ambition were forced to admit it was more burden than blessing. The next machine carries a world-class badge, but as many riders found out, that nameplate can only take you so far. Number 8. BMW G 310 GS. Adventure styling without true adventure substance. That's what many riders found in the G310 GS. The engine delivers 34 horsepower and 21 pound-feet of torque from a 313 cubic centimeter single cylinder. On paper, it promised lightweight versatility and the trusted BMW name, but in practice, it consistently fell short of expectations across nearly every riding condition. Fit and finish concerns, reported electrical issues, and an engine that struggles at highway speeds made the riding experience feel compromised and incomplete. Riders expecting confidence off-road discovered a chassis that lacked serious trail capability, while pavement performance proved underwhelming for daily commuting and weekend touring. Even its affordability could not offset the frustration many owners experienced early on. Complaints of stalling, vibration, and poor throttle response continue to appear on forums, souring its reputation further. Despite good intentions, the execution left much to be desired, especially for riders used to BMW standards. Despite its badge, this small adventure bike never truly earned its place in the lineup or the garage. Coming up next is a street fighter with a legendary name, but its bite never quite matched its bark. Number 7. Ducati Monster 937. Sometimes a strong name cannot carry a weak execution. The Monster 937 produces 111 horsepower and 69 pound-feet of torque from a 937 cubic centimeter Testastretta L-twin. Built as a stripped-down naked sport machine, it had the looks, the lineage, and the promise. But it fell flat for many riders once rubber met road and expectations met reality. The problem was never outright performance, it was value. With a starting price competing against more powerful and better equipped Japanese bikes, riders quickly noticed its shortcomings. Issues with throttle response, quick shifter reliability, and finicky electronics added frustration to ownership. Maintenance costs, a long-standing Ducati burden, only deepened the gap between promise and payoff. Forums filled with complaints, and used models began appearing with low miles and even lower asking prices. Despite its history, the Monster struggled to carve a place in a market that demands both thrill and dependability. What should have been a rider-focused street machine ended up becoming a reminder that reputation alone does not guarantee a great ride. Next up is a cruiser that packed serious horsepower, but the power came at a cost most weren't willing to pay. Number 6. Yamaha VMAX. Powerful enough to be feared and bold enough to be remembered, the VMAX was once the icon of muscle cruisers. The engine cranks out 174 horsepower and 113 pound-feet of torque from a 1,679 cubic centimeter V4. No one questioned its brute strength, but modern expectations quickly outgrew its one-trick nature and left it behind in silence. The weight was a major issue. At nearly 700 pounds wet, it was unwieldy in tight turns and exhausting for daily use. Without traction control or advanced rider aids, the VMAX felt more like a rocket with handlebars than a usable street machine. Fuel range was pitiful, comfort was minimal, and even longtime fans began to admit its time had passed. As insurance premiums rose and parts became harder to find, resale value dropped just as fast as fuel in the tank. Even short weekend rides could feel like a chore on this overbuilt beast. The VMAX was a legend, but it stayed in the fight long after the market moved on. Following that heavyweight, we moved to a stylish machine that proved good looks cannot carry you down the highway. Number 5. Triumph Bonneville Bobber. Elegance and grit made the Bonneville Bobber one of the most eye-catching factory customs of its time. The engine offers 78 horsepower and 73 pound-feet of torque from an 1,120 cubic centimeter parallel twin. At first glance, it delivers timeless lines and British attitude, but practical riders found more form than function under the surface. With a solo seat, limited suspension travel, and minimal onboard tech, it quickly revealed its limitations. Range was modest, storage non-existent, and comfort faded after only short rides on uneven terrain. Owners appreciated the look but admitted that riding it daily took commitment and tolerance for compromises. Lacking cruise control, cornering aids, or passenger capability, it fit a very narrow use case. Weekend showpiece, not all-around cruiser. For older riders who valued dependability over design, it felt like a mismatch wrapped in chrome. It was never built to conquer miles, and that's exactly what hurt its long-term appeal. Next is a cruiser that was supposed to be your way into a proud American brand, but ended up costing more than it gave back. Number 4. Indian Scout 60. For riders seeking a gateway into American V-twin ownership, the Scout 60 promised classic lines and strong character. The engine produces 78 horsepower and 65 pound-feet of torque from a 999 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin. At a glance, it offered the same styling as its big brother, with a friendlier price tag and a welcoming seat height. What it lacked, though, became painfully obvious over time. With minimal electronic features, basic suspension, and a 5-speed transmission, it started to feel dated even when new. Riders complained of poor comfort on long rides and steep depreciation within just a couple of years. Servicing was expensive and often limited to dealerships, pushing total cost of ownership well beyond its starting price. The Scout 60 looked like a solid first step, but for many riders it became a short-lived and costly experiment. Coming up next is a high-profile cruiser that carried a legendary badge but failed to connect with the faithful or the future. Number 3. BMW R18. Size and shine are not enough when a cruiser forgets the rider. The R18 delivers 91 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque from an 1,802 cubic centimeter boxer twin. Designed to take on heavyweight American cruisers, it aimed for heritage charm but landed with awkward proportions and limited practicality. Weighing over 870 pounds, the R18 feels more like a sculpted anchor than a dynamic motorcycle. The engine sounds great and has torque to spare, but the ride becomes a chore in traffic or tight turns. Riders complain about heat management, rough low-speed handling, and tech that feels underdeveloped for the price point. The analog digital dash feels dated, and comfort quickly fades on longer rides. It might look impressive on a showroom floor, but the riding experience lacks soul and functionality. Two things cruiser buyers refuse to compromise on. Coming up is a three-wheeled oddity that tried to change the rules of the road and lost the plot in the process. Number 2. Can-Am Spyder F3. 3 wheels and a futuristic frame made the Spyder F3 stand out, but standing out does not always mean success. The engine produces 115 horsepower and 96 pound-feet of torque from a 1,330 cubic centimeter triple-cylinder power plant. Despite those numbers, the ride leaves much to be desired. Steering is handled rather than leaned, and that disconnect turns riding into an exercise in constant adjustment. Its bulk, over 900 pounds, makes it tough to maneuver in tight spaces, and its wide footprint limits lane access and parking flexibility. Riders expecting the freedom of 2 wheels find the Spyder's operation awkward and overly complex, especially when switching from traditional motorcycles. While safety features are commendable, the lack of thrill and the high cost of ownership have kept it firmly in a niche that never grew. The final bike on our list aimed to blend vintage styling with modern flair, only to get lost in the middle. If you ride, restore, or just respect real machines, make sure you're subscribed. There's a lot more coming for those who know what these bikes once meant and what's replacing them. Number 1. Honda CB1000R. Trying to be everything to everyone is a fast way to become forgettable. The CB1000R delivers 143 horsepower and 77 pound-feet of torque from a 998 cubic centimeter inline 4-cylinder engine. Built to merge sport bike aggression with cafe-inspired aesthetics, it ended up confusing more riders than it impressed. The bike rides well, no doubt, but lacks standout features. It offers no cruise control, minimal ride modes, and styling that fails to satisfy either classic purists or sport-focused buyers. While competitors in its price range come packed with advanced electronics and bold design, the CB1000R plays it too safe. It is not light enough to feel nimble, nor refined enough to justify the price tag. For a bike that should have delivered high-end performance with character, it simply misses the mark, and the resale market reflects that reality. Some bikes were built to last, others just to sell, but if you thought this list was brutal, wait until you see what Honda just dropped, because when one brand falls, another rises. Watch Honda just released a new cruiser model and destroyed Harley-Davidson. Next, and see why the road ahead no longer belongs to Milwaukee. Like, comment, and subscribe, because this ride isn't slowing down anytime soon.